that's better.
Man, I can't believe we lost all of that.
Well, that was a good warm up.
Jeez.
Right.
How far in were we?
I don't know, but we'll probably just go
Half
again.
an hour?
Yeah, something like that. That was a good warm up though. We'll know to trim
Yeah.
the fat. Your microphone's very loud now for some reason.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I can try turning it down. I don't know if I can turn it down. Is that getting lower?
No.
No. I can push it farther away.
Maybe.
I can put it back there. Can you still
Okay.
hear me okay?
I can
Is
hear
that
you.
good?
That sounds good. Yeah, it's all right.
All right. Just pushed it back a bit.
Yay.
Yay. Bolton Part 2, Take 2.
Yeah, we're having some interesting fun.
Yeah, and it looks like it's on my end. It's the internet connection where I am in Atlanta, just not fast enough to keep up with this sizzling conversation.
Well, the world is online at the moment, I guess, so
Yeah, it's the day after Boxing Day.
well, when is the world never online? I mean, everything's online now, so
Yeah.
let's just assume everything's always being pounded with the bandwidth. So yeah, it's shitty, but there we go. That is the joy of running a podcast, is trying to deal with these things.
Laugh riot. The never-ending up and down of internet recording.
Yeah, well, what can you do?
So it goes. Yeah, we just soldier on.
Yeah,
it is the English way.
One tries one's best. So basically, yeah, Bolton Part 2. The conversation was very, very different from the first one, which was basically about visual effects and how it isn't always grass is greener kind of situation. Everyone just assumes,
which in and of itself was a rather different subject for us to cover.
Well, it was, because I think practical people have typically thought of digital stuff as kind of swanning in and just kind of like stealing all the good work from practical effects, and they're having a great time, and it isn't like that at all. It's not like that at all.
No.
And it's work, and it's a different kind of thing. But anyway, you listen to the first one to find out what we're on about. That's not really the point of this one. Part 2 was completely different. Part 2 was all about confidence and particularly self-confidence, and why it matters, how to build it, and what we think the destructors are that break it down.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, the idea for this topic was brought up by a student in the Bolton makeup effects course when we were at the prosthetics event during our conversation with Jake Garber.
Yes.
Yeah, and we thought this is something that we definitely need to talk about.
Yeah, because when you look at
it affects us all.
Yeah, because when you look at Jake, he seems, as he should, being an on-set supervisor, very tall, very confident, very powerful. And whether or not he would agree with that assessment, the point is that's the perception. And I think perception is such an important aspect of this, because how you think about yourself will affect how you carry yourself. And in a weird way, it has a lot to do possibly with how people see you, but people often imagine how they are perceived rather than how they are perceived. And so they may obsess about the wrong things. You know what I mean? People who need to do one thing actually obsess about something else, thinking that will be the thing that makes them improve. And actually, no, it's the other thing you need to worry about, so.
And while this is not a solitary business, there are many, many times when we do work alone. And when we're working alone, some of those demons can creep out and attack us. And we have no support mechanism in place when we're working alone to battle those, to make them go away and let us see that it's okay to feel that you're not good enough, to feel that your work is not good enough. That it's something that happens to all of us, and it's going to continue to happen to all of us as long as we keep working in this field. And that actually is a good thing, because it lets us know that we're on the right track. We've talked about this before, that we're always needing to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
And it's that sense of discomfort that lets us know that something's working, because it should always be a pursuit of perfection. We never will really get there.
Mm.
It's always going to be a journey. It's never going to, we'll never get to that destination. And that's okay. That doesn't mean, that your work isn't good. It's just that it can be better, always be better, no matter how good you are.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say about whether your work is good, because I think, as you pointed out, one of the things is it good enough? Is the client happy? Because if you're working for somebody else, that external valuation is quite useful, because you put that decision in the hands of somebody else.
Oh, absolutely.
You often work as hard as necessary. And obviously you have a time limit and there's a budget, there's a limit to how much you can do. And I think the real danger comes in when you do your own personal work in a weird kind of way. There are fewer restrictions that you might place on yourself, other than the ones that you place on yourself when things get difficult. So you might indulge,
You don't want to let yourself become complacent when you're working on your own stuff, to think that, oh, this is my personal work. It doesn't pursue it the same way you would as if you're doing contract work for somebody else. Create deadlines so you can keep to a schedule. Something I have to do working on my books is, I know I have a deadline, but it's off in the distance.
Yep.
So, that immediate pressure is not there, but, as you get closer, it becomes greater and more stressful if you haven't built a game plan and put an outline into play of, okay, by the end of next week, I need to have 2 chapters finished. It doesn't matter which 2 chapters, but I have to have 2 chapters finished by the end of next week.
Yep.
Or I'm going to be in trouble, because that keeps piling up, because by the week after that, I have to have another 2 chapters finished. Or whatever it is. Set yourself goals and make certain that you reach them.
Yeah, I think it's important to have big goals, and then you have to break them down into a series of daily steps, so that you can see day by day by day that you are achieving progress on those goals. Because if you have a big goal, say, for example, like an easy analogy would be like losing weight. Say I'm going to lose, 20 pounds. And it's like, well, until I've lost 20 pounds, I haven't achieved that goal. It's like, yeah, but you might only lose, I don't know, a pound a week. And that's fine, because that's not difficult to do. But for 20 weeks, you do that easy thing and you've lost your 20 pounds. Whereas if you only set those massive markers, and it's like that with the job or with the words, you got to write these chapters, but maybe you got to spend 3 days researching. So you break that down into, I'm going to research this, I'm going to research that, I'm going to research this. And so long as you do those things on those days, you can sort of tick them off and see that you're advancing on your schedule. And that gives you the confidence to know that you are pursuing it correctly and you are making gains. And there
may be times which you're going to have to adjust your goal when you realize, okay, maybe I set an unrealistic deadline for this. You make some adjustments, but you don't make that, don't completely throw it all out. You just make adjustments, which is okay when you're doing personal work. If you're doing contract work for somebody else, they have a set deadline, like this TV show, we've already bought the airtime. It is going on the air such and such, or this play opens on this date. You have to get things done, even if okay, I didn't meet this intermediate deadline, but the ultimate finish line is not going to change. I've got to do whatever it takes now. Since I missed this deadline of mine, I've got to make sure that I ramp up so I don't miss that ultimate goal line. And it takes a lot of self-control.
Excuse me, still haven't shaken off that cough. That's not COVID, by the way. I've been testing myself 3 times a week. It's just the residual effects of bronchitis. Like everything else that makes you ill has fucked off since COVID came along. It's like, no, that shit's still
nothing
there.
else matters. It's all COVID.
God almighty. So there is that that thing to make your goals. But yeah,
Yeah.
creating stuff is quite often a lengthy and lonely process, and that's when that shit can really, needle in there. What we have got in here, which is good, on the extensive notes, you have to check out the note. We write notes, sometimes shorter notes, sometimes longer notes, but on this one, or on
Yeah.
these
This is
these
a good set
groups,
of notes.
yeah, because we listen through them and then make notes as we listening through them, and then we expand on things, we drop other things, and then we chat, and then things go in there, and so there's a lot of words here. So it's good to read stuff, it's good to listen to stuff, and it reinforces the other. So if you go to battleswithbitsofrubber.com, this one is episode 81. You will find the extensive list of notes there. But one of the things I'm quite pleased with that we did go into was confidence and how to build it. We're not just saying about, oh, confidence is important. We actually give like a kind of a bulleted kind of thing in the podcast about, why it's important, the practice of building confidence. What is it you can actually do to help build that confidence? And I think doing small things well and completing them. I mean, I think it's good to start something and then finish it. And so maybe do something small, and the act of finishing it and completing it and drawing a line under it and saying, right, that's done. Then you can do that again. And doing these in a small scale yourself before you do anything for anybody else, you'll meet the problems, you'll meet your mistakes. And those are good things to do, because you've got to get past them one way or another. It's better to make
It's
little
good
mistakes.
to, you're going to have to try new things in order to improve, in order to grow as a person and as an artist. But don't try to do something huge that you haven't done before, because proportionally, the mistakes you'll make on that enormous project could be career ending. They could dishearten you to the point where, I don't want to try this, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
But if you've never done a face before, start out with a nose, start out with a pair of lips, get good at pieces of the face before you do the whole face, so that when a mistake happens, when the frustration sets in, it's manageable.
Yeah. And cheaper.
And you can and cheaper, definitely, and you can recover from it and start again. And it's okay. Mistakes will happen throughout your career. You just don't want to keep making the same ones, and you want to make smaller ones until you get to your comfort zone, which we've talked about. Yeah. And you get outside your comfort zone so you can grow. And then you're going to make different mistakes, and they will get smaller and smaller as your skill level increases. You have to go through multiple steps in order to learn something. And if you never make mistakes, learning doesn't take place. There are several instances of an activity that have to happen in order for that information and that skill level to make it into long-term memory, so that it becomes part of your skill set that you don't have to think about anymore. It's just, how to do it. It's gotten into muscle memory, and it's permanently in your memory banks.
Yeah, I mean
but making mistakes has to happen before that can happen.
Yeah, because forging those neural pathways is difficult. It's hard work, and like you say, but repetition reinforces them, and the second time you do something, it's much easier.
You've heard the adage that it takes a minimum of 10,000 hours of doing something before you become an expert.
Yeah, which can sound very disheartening if you haven't enjoyed the first hour of it. But that's the thing. I think you do need to enjoy this stuff, because
it's supposed to be fun. It's the entertainment industry.
Yeah, but also things can be not fun because you're approaching it the wrong way. Like, for example, like you just said about the makeup. If somebody says, "Oh, I've never done a prosthetic before, but I'm going to do a realistic old age whole head makeup," and then you get halfway through and you're like, Jesus Christ, and simple things like undercuts or not knowing how to texture something, you meet these things head on. We've said before, you can find out that you don't know those things on a nose. You can find out that you don't know how to make a core on a nose. You can find out what an undercut is on a nose. You can find out that you can't color skin on a nose. You can find out that your edges are shit and you don't know how to get good edges on a nose, because all of those things are fixable within a week. But if you've invested hundreds of dollars worth of materials on something that's massive, and you now know that is not going to yield anything, you are, like you said, you're disheartened. And you've basically jumped the gun. You wouldn't run an Ironman marathon weekend because you fancied a jog, because you'd collapse after the first 10 miles. You know what I mean? It's like,
no. And then you find yourself suddenly out of a lot of materials that cost good money, and you can't get that time back that you spent creating this massive failure. So
you will have learned a lot, but
you've set yourself.
But you'll be overwhelmed with self-loathing to notice.
And you want to try to avoid that. Self-loathing, not good.
No. Oh, well, we have that piece of software in our heads anyway. That's always there. We all feed it.
I think that's part of the nature of being an artist. We never think our work is good enough. We walk on the set on a new project and see all the other people there working and go, they're gonna see through me in a second.
And no, it's basically it's learning the fundamentals of things. Rick said something that was very good. He had a quote on there that was very, very cool. If you know what a brick is, you can understand what a wall is, which I really like that. And a house is just an extension of that concept. But if you haven't got your head around what a brick is, you're going to be absolutely thrown when you see a house, because you won't know what that is. And that analogy is a very good one for any of this stuff. And complexity is basically layers of simple things just piled on top of each other.
It's like with sculpting. You don't want to start out sculpting details. You want to rough in your broad forms, and then you refine. It's working from the outside in.
Yeah. And do you know something? I think that's where ZBrush really helps, because if you have a low resolution model to start with, you can't put detail into it because there's not enough polygons on there. So it actually forces you to look at the general shape, the gross forms. And I think for people starting out, actually something like ZBrush Core Mini, which is free, or Nomad, or which is an iPad app, which is like 15 quid. Those are very inexpensive ways of playing with sculpting and getting things out of the way. With clay
and Blender, is Blender free? Is Blender free?
Blender is free too.
Blender is also another good one.
And it's still the act of sculpting. Even though they're digital tools, they're still sculpt. Just like if you're going to write a story, you're going to write a 200-word story, you could choose to use a biro on a piece of on a legal pad, or you can type it. You don't say, well, if I'm typing it, it's a different thing than if I write it by hand. It's like, no, it's the same fucking process, because the hard thing is the plot and the characters and the story and whether it's engaging. That's got fuck all do whether you're tapping keys or making words with a pen. And it's exactly the same with digital sculpting.
And I think because of, and we talked about this with Maddie Spencer, and we talked about it in the visual effects podcast, Bolton podcast, in part 1. Digital sculpting is here to stay, folks, and it's going to become more and more a part of the practical effects world. And the sooner you can wrap your heads around it and start wearing that hat well, also, the more value you're going to have. And as Jake said in our conversation, the more you can do, the more you'll get to do.
Very, very good advice. That solid piece of advice. One thing I want to point out is that we grew up without social media. I mean, we didn't have the internet growing up.
No, didn't. Personal computers. When I was in college, computers were the size of your bedroom.
So people
and you programmed it with punch cards. It's
which I know. Just saying that sentence kind of splits a line between you and a group of people if you're teaching, because I've noticed when you teach in a class, you may have a lot of younger people there who didn't not grow up with Google. They've always had social media or the internet, because social media is more recent obviously than the internet. But
students today don't know life without personal computers.
No, and they've got all of those advantages that comes with, but also there's a lot of new shit that people have to deal with that they just didn't do before. I was saying
the internet is both a good thing and a bad thing.
It's a tricky one, because I think the thing about social media is it actively pushes stuff in front of you that is designed to distract you and keep your attention. But you're going to be presented with the best things and the worst things in the world. And you'll see people who are doing what you do to such a high proficient level that if you're comparing us, because you've seen them on your phone, you kind of go, well, they exist and they're better than me, and I haven't got a chance of getting anywhere near as good as them at whatever.
Yeah.
So what's the point in trying? And it's like that anxiety didn't exist before, really, because you may have known about amazing people, but you weren't fed a daily update of how much better than they are you today.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm a victim of that as well. I look at Chris Costa's ZBrush work, and I think to myself, why the fuck do I even bother trying? This, I will never get to that level. And then I realized, it's okay. I'm not Chris Costa.
No.
And he's not me. Don't judge yourself by someone else's success or failure.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. The number of followers or likes that somebody has is really a hollow endorsement of quality.
Yes. Was it that you said
because a lot of those followers haven't got a clue of what really good work is or what it takes to get there.
And would those followers pay you? That's the thing. You might get people that like what you do on a superficial level, but they're not clients. They're shelling out lots of money to pay you for what you do. It's very easy to like something from a distance, but it's very different to actually dig deep and pay someone, a month's wages to do something. Though you only need to impress a few people to get paid. You know what I mean? They just need to be the right people. And I think that's from a professional point of view, that's what I try and put across in our classes. Like the things that I like to see in a folio are not necessarily the things that are very popular on social media. Like someone puts blood on something and, oh, it's amazing, it's talented. But you could do a really realistic nose on someone and there's nothing to see, just a different nose. And if you haven't seen that person's nose before, that's why it's good to do makeups when they do makeups in movies, when they're the most successful prosthetics are often those on people you don't recognize because you don't know what they look like normally.
When I was teaching visual effects courses, I used to tell my students, that the best compliment someone can give a visual effects artist is to look at their work, their finished work, and have no idea what they did. And the same holds true for a really good prosthetic makeup. To look at the finish, in order to know what they've done, you have to see the before and the after side by side to see the change, because the ultimate goal is to be able to have somebody in prosthetic makeup and not be able to tell that someone is wearing prosthetics.
Yeah, and they just look at me. Have you seen the penguin stuff that Mike Marino did? And also in the House of Gucci, Goran did the makeup on Jared Leto, and it's just fucking beautiful.
Yeah, and that's not to say that you couldn't have that person in the prosthetic makeup standing right next to you, inches away from in your field of vision, and I can't tell. Makeup is makeup.
Yes.
It's to an untrained eye up close, you can fool someone into thinking that that's somebody else. But to a trained eye up close, you're still going to be able to tell that it's makeup, but it's so well applied that for its intended usage on camera, you can't tell.
Yeah.
It's impossible to tell. I mean, does that make sense?
Absolutely does. And I think that's a very key point, because when you do your own makeup, you are looking at it with your eyes and you are looking, correctly so, for all the faults, but that can be overwhelming. And then you look at a picture in a magazine or on a screen of a beautifully lit, a beautifully performed makeup on an expert performer in beautiful costume, and it's in the context of a story, and everything is top notch. And of course it looks great. I'm not denigrating any of the work. I'm just saying when you're starting out, if it's your second or third makeup and you've done, this is what the perilous and difficult thing of copying makeups. Like someone will do, I don't know, an Avatar makeup, and it's like Avatar wasn't makeup. They were digital. So you doing a really good face paint job, you're still not going to get it right because the eyes are too far apart. The proportions are wrong because they're not humans. And, or even if you do like, I'm going to copy, I don't know, let me do a Voldemort makeup. And it's like, well, the people that did that, A, the nose was digital, but B, that was a really, really good makeup done by, several good professionals working hard on a high budget movie with a top class actor. If you stick that on Terry from Accounts and he's not fucking Ray Fiennes, and he doesn't spend his life working in multi-million-dollar movies, and you haven't been doing this for 30 years, you are not going to do as good a job. So why the fuck? I wouldn't go up to Mo Farah and fucking challenge him to a 100-meter race and then be devastated because I didn't win. He's the fastest fucking human being on two legs. Of course he's going to beat me. I'm a podgy fucking 50-year-old. So it's like, what are you thinking? So you have to work like for like. And when you're starting out, you absolutely should do something small to the very best of your ability, log all of the things that go wrong, figure out why, and do it again better, and just keep coming back. And you'll feel better about it because you, as you say, you're not comparing yourself with the very best or other people. Your locus of evaluation should come from yourself. Have I done better this week than I did last week? And if the answer is yes, you're going the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's look at your work from yesterday as compared to today.
Yes.
And if there's an improvement, put a check in the plus column.
That's all you can ask for, man.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. And some people will
you are the only person you need to compare yourself to.
Yeah. And some people will get faster than you, but that's tough shit. That's just how it goes. Some people grow taller.
That's completely different from finding inspiration.
Yeah.
And looking at someone's work, because I look at Chris Costa's work and go, oh my God, that is fucking astonishing.
Because you can't even see what's being done. You're just looking at, holy shit, there's a Renaissance man in a big hat. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I can't even see. I
didn't know they had photography in 1525.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. you know, it's just, but that's why you need to look at how they got to where they did. And like you say, when you see a lot of this stuff, people are showing their best thing, but they're not. Yeah. I mean, Chris's thing is that he teaches that, so that's why you will see those things. But
yeah,
you're right.
And that's also, you look at that and you can see, okay, it's what pushes you. Look at the stuff, how amazing it is, and it's what pushes you to, oh, how did he do that? And you can, if you think about it, and if you're already playing with ZBrush, or you're pushing clay around, what tool could I use to get that texture? It helps you move forward because it gets those juices flowing. Oh my God, I need to know how to do that.
Yeah. And I think ZBrush particularly is one of those things that some things are so easy to do that it's almost not worth mentioning, but they're very impressive because you think of them in practical terms. Like if you texture something, you hand deposit pores into plastiline with the tool one by one. Whereas if you've got a brush that has pores on it and someone shows you that, go, oh shit. Oh, I'm not even worried. Do you know what I mean? It's not even a thing.
Yeah.
So
that comes into working smart, not hard.
Yes.
It's you can mirror things in ZBrush. It's like, well, that's kind of like cheating, but no, it's not. You want to work smart, not hard. It's a good idea to want to know how to do all of that stuff individually, but if there are tools available that can give you some shortcuts to achieving the same results, by all means use them.
Well, the thing is, if you have those tools, I mean, the other thing is as well, rarely do you keep it symmetrical. You might symmetrically block stuff out, but
people are not symmetrical.
People are not, so you will add that asymmetry in, but it's sensible and desirable when sculpting to try and work symmetrically. But also, you don't just sort of call it half a day's work because of these conveniences. You instead use that extra time that you save doing more of the other stuff. So you'll spend more time blocking it out. You'll spend more time correcting things and getting the posture right, and the gestures and the pose and all that kind of stuff. You now have more time to do that. Similarly, like I'm not having to weld up an armature when I sculpt a figure in ZBrush. So I can spend more time sculpting the head or sculpting the figure because I'm not having to carry heavy bags of clay up into the workshop. Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah,
you still work a 10-hour day or whatever, but more of that time is now sculpting. It's kind of like working from home. You cut out the commute, that just gives you an extra couple of hours to get stuff done. It's
and I think it's because of these tools that we now have at our disposal that can help us build confidence in our abilities, because we now have the luxury of more time working digitally to get better to make
Yeah.
mistakes and fix them and get better than if we were working in more traditional terms, because there is definite crossover between sculpting with clay and sculpting digitally.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. If you're going to work at night using electric lights, are you going to insist on working by candlelight because that's what your forefathers did? It's like, no,
right.
fuck it.
Yeah.
I like having lights.
I want to work the way Michelangelo did.
Yeah, I'm not going to buy paint. I'm going to dig out pigments from the ground and fucking make my own egg yolk pastes and hope. No, you fucking just buy paint. You don't even think about buying paint as being a shortcut. So there is, you know, you can just spend more time painting. And I suspect you probably get better painters nowadays because they didn't spend half their time sourcing things that you can just buy in an art shop. I mean, laziness is possible, obviously, but I'm just saying.
But the same thing. I was like, oh, I wish I could live in an earlier time when things were simpler. It's just different. You know, what's the Woody Allen movie, After Midnight, I guess. It's, you know, about them wanting to live in earlier times because it was better, and he goes back in time and see that they're all having the same commiserations. They wish they could live in an earlier time because things were better. So you're like, oh yeah, my painting. But it comes down to the point I'm trying to make, that, you know, your work can always be better. You know, that the impressionist, I know this painting could have been better if I could have just found some blue paint. But, you know, but blue was very expensive paint to acquire. So you look at some of the impressionists, and when you see blue, it was a time of prosperity because they could afford to buy blue paint.
Do you know, I'm really, it's weird you mentioned that, because one of the things I wanted to get stuck into was the Blind Boy podcast. And I was going to put a link of that in the blog post notes. I played a couple of Blind Boy.
Yeah, we listened to some of the Blind Boy.
And he gets into a lot of things. I think what I've written here was, where are we? I started social media and its effects on people has a lot to answer for what seems to be a worldwide effect on self-confidence and esteem. An awareness of that and a sensible exploration and some pushback is a reasonable response to examine what it means for you personally and how you can take back more control from it. So, and to that end, I would say that a podcast we highly recommend is the Blind Boy podcast. And he's an interesting character because when you see him, he has a plastic bag on his head with holes in it. So he's not stupid. Yeah. He wants to be able to breathe. And a lot of people will have a lot to say about that, I'm sure. If you're not familiar with him, I would recommend, don't let the fact he wears a bag on his head stop you from listening to what he has to say, because he's fascinating. But he did a podcast quite recently about colors and pigments, because he does a lot of talks about art history.
I'm going to have to check that one out. Yeah.
Very, very good.
It's a very, as you said, very good podcast.
But yeah, he's very good at breaking stuff down. But he does a lot of stuff about mental health because he himself suffered from anxiety, and also he had social anxiety, a lot of phobias. He got panic attacks being in public, and he couldn't go outside, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And
well, that's part of the reason behind him wearing the bag, is because he does not like the public attention, and if people
he wants to be able to do his thing.
Recognize him.
Yes, because he was in a band.
He won't be able to do his thing.
Yeah, he's in a band called the Rubber Bandits, and they had there's a few songs you could check the songs out online on YouTube. Horse Outside is the most famous one, and he was quite raucous in his, but his gigs were quite sort of violent and shouty and shirt off, and it was quite boisterous stuff. And what he didn't want to do was he didn't want to personally be part of the spectacle. He wanted to be able to perform, do his thing, and then after the show was done, he wanted to live a normal life. He wanted to take a bus or go to the store and just, without people going, oh, look, there's Blind Boy buying toilet paper. He just wanted to live his life because he doesn't want to be part of that, because he's seen the effect it has. I think he mentioned it was Big Brother. You guys watch Big Brother. I mean, you probably don't watch it, but you're aware of the show Big Brother.
Yeah.
So you'd have people that were not famous in a house on TV. You get voted out. And basically a lot of them became celebrities. And then when they didn't win Big Brother, people would see them a year later, not having won, trying to live a normal life, and people sort of jeering and making fun of them because they're famous enough to be recognized, but they didn't make enough money doing it to have like bodyguards and a private estate and all that kind of stuff. So now they got to live in the real world, and that has a very negative effect on your mental health. So a big part of his thing was to not do any of that shit, was to perform, do his thing, say good things, be out in the public doing gigs. He has his podcast, but what he looks like is private, and it doesn't need to be anybody's business. And I really like that. Yeah. I think that's a good thing. So I would recommend the Blind Boy podcast anyway. It consistently it refreshes my mind and makes me feel good, and I learn a lot from it as well, especially with history and art history. They're amazing. You should listen to the one about
which one did we listen to?
The one about the KFC.
Oh, that
recipe, yeah, the original KFC recipe, which is just, I mean, even that sounds mental, but it was fascinating.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, there's loads. There's loads on pigments and stuff. That there was a very good one on lobster, why lobster's an expensive food, why there are pineapples in a lot of Victorian designs. Yeah, that sounds mental. All those things don't sound interesting, but they really are. The swastika laundry in Ireland. All kinds of stuff. Amazing, absolutely amazing. But yeah, possibly my favorite.
If you're a history buff, it will definitely appeal to you.
Yes, I mean, life is so dense and there's so many things going on, and that's one of the things I really like about the Blind Boy podcast. It makes you realize all this other shit that you can be interested in. You don't just have to worry about, you know, what the latest thing is on TikTok or how you look or this guy. There's a plethora of stuff that demands your attention, and you would have a happier life if you knew about it. So I'll go check that out.
And Blind Boy, you're welcome for the publicity.
Oh, fuck it, man. He's given me so much entertainment and I've learned so much. It's been a brilliant thing. But the reason I think that's important, because he talks a lot about mental health, and he talks about it is pushback against the negative effects of social media. Obviously, it's how you use it. I mean, as he says, you know, any substance, what you have to, and I'm considering social media as a substance. You have to evaluate your relationship with the substance. You know, I mean, I can have a drink and it's fine, but if I can't get through a day without a drink, then that's a problem. You know, and it's different, and that's the trouble. I think there's a lot of people are pretty much addicted to social media, and no one's really addressing that. So, you know, it has a lot of negative effects.
Yeah, the internet is a good thing, but only when used for good and not for evil.
Yeah, and I think, for my money, I'm convinced it was Edward Bernays that started it all, and I put up a little bit of information on that in there as well.
That was an interesting little read. Sigmund Freud's nephew, kind of the precursor to modern advertising.
Yeah,
you know, the psychology of advertising, to be more precise.
Yeah, well, because there was a time where, you know, before 1920 odd, if you made a good soap, you would just tell people, here is soap, it makes you clean. And now, after this whole psychological aspect was taken into consideration, it's not just about the product, it's how are you a better version of yourself because of this product. So we reveal and make you feel inadequate in certain ways, and you can make those better by buying this product. And that's pretty much now how everything's done. And it's having a negative effect on a lot of things.
Yeah, it's adding the why.
Yeah, but we're so used to it, you don't realize there was a time where that wasn't how things were done. And so learning about Edward Bernays was fascinating. There's a documentary that Adam Curtis made called The Century of the Self, which is it's exploring the effect of Edward Bernays on culture and how it changed from one thing to the next. I'll read out quickly this thing that was it was the information on an upload of that documentary.
All this information will be in the notes.
Oh, it's in the notes, but I just want to read it in case people can't be asked to read the notes. They may hear this and decide that they want to read the notes having heard this. So the quote is, the story of, this is about The Century of the Self, about Edward Bernays. The story of the relationship between Sigmund Freud and his American nephew, Edward Bernays. Bernays invented public relations profession in the 1920s and was the first person to take Freud's ideas to manipulate the masses. He showed American corporations how they could make people want things they didn't need by systematically linking mass-produced goods to their unconscious desires. Bernays was one of the main architects in the modern techniques of mass consumer persuasion, using every trick in the book, from celebrity endorsement and outrageous PR stunts to eroticizing the motor car. His most notorious coup was breaking the taboo on women smoking, because back in the day, they weren't selling enough cigarettes because typically women didn't smoke, certainly not to the same degree men would, and they wanted to sell more tobacco. So They persuaded them that cigarettes were a symbol of independence and freedom. But Bernays was convinced this was more than just a way of selling consumer goods. It was a new political idea of how to control the masses. And he ended up getting some suffragettes. He gave them free cigarettes and then used them on this march. And then a lot of women wanted to support the suffragettes, bought the cigarette. That's how fucking cynical this was. It's pretty evil. By satisfying the inner irrational desires that his uncle had identified, people could be made happy and thus docile. It was the start of an all-consuming self, which has come to dominate today's world. So it's an interesting and perhaps depressing look at that side of things. But I think it doesn't hurt to be aware that it exists, and it wasn't always like that. And if you can be aware of it, you can kind of catch it a bit and make improvements and adjustments to your life accordingly.
I spent years working in advertising, and I'm guilty of perpetrating this.
Same. I think, you work in a professional environment doing makeups and things, or in the media, you can work towards it. So, but it's an interesting one. I realize this may sound like it's drifting from our remit of like rubber guys that make rubber noses,
but not really.
But not really, because where that comes from, in the long quiet hours of sculpting, these self-doubts creep up, and it's like, where do they come from? We have them, they're normal. It's just whether or not they've been weaponized and used to make you buy shit you don't need with money.
And we're getting it because it's been part of our ethos for so long that we don't pay attention to it, and it just happens.
Yeah. Well, there we go. I mean, I think we quite like to promote quiet competence on this podcast. I've always been a champion of that. There are always people that want to know the big, flashy, clever things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But being good at something takes effort and time, and is valuable and makes you feel good when you can do it. And so I will always push that. But that gets,
if you want to be recognized for your work, that's okay. But it's also okay to just be very good at what you do, and the people that matter, having the people who are the best at this, probably you've said this, and I'm just repeating what you've said before. The people that really matter, who are the best at this, don't have a huge social media presence, or if they do,
maybe Rick Baker.
They don't.
He's an exception.
They don't have huge followings, but the people that hire them over and over again are already familiar with their work, and they don't need that huge social media presence in order to be working all the time.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, because
am I echoing your sentiment?
Absolutely. I mean, in a good year, I may work for 8-9 people.
Yeah.
And that's enough to pay my bills for the year. So I only need to appeal to those right people. I don't need thousands and thousands of followers. Because here's the thing, if you have thousands and thousands of followers, and that's what you count as successful, are those thousands of followers paying your bills? Probably not. And if they do, you can't control if somebody who does what you do that's more interesting comes along and just sweeps all that away. That happens all the time, where suddenly the golden boy of one thing is now, you could be the top gamer doing a YouTube thing, and that's great. Then someone comes along using what they've learned from you, and then suddenly, because they're quirkier, everyone switches over to them, and you can't control that. You have no control over that. You're sailing on the tide. That's it. So you don't want to give everything away like that and have nothing to give. And I think that's why acquiring skills and competence and enjoying the process of that acquisition of skills, and then using those skills to be of service to other people, is truly the best thing you can do with your life. It's a complete circle that feeds itself. It's a beautiful thing. And it's difficult at times to do that. But that doesn't mean it's not worth your time, because I can't think of anything better to do.
I'm with you. This is the most fun I've ever had professionally, and I've had a lot of fun.
Awesome, man. Well, we should probably stop waffling so you can actually just listen to this episode.
Yeah, and let us know.
This wasn't it. This was just the preamble. Here's Bolton Part 2.
A whole nother talk.
who doesn't like to eat a little bit of monster clay every now and then?
I like to specifically monster.
Did you say you were eating monster clay?
I've tried it.
Well, of course.
It looks way tastier than it is.
Yeah, but it doesn't taste bad.
Yeah, it's not awful.
But I've known
that
somebody,
dog treat tasted way worse.
No, I've known somebody that had some sculpts in clay, and their workshop was locked up over Christmas. When they came back, half of the stuff had been eaten by mice. They actually went into the workshop and eaten the monster clay.
Wow.
So that's a fun story.
Did they find them like plasticized in the work?
I don't know. I can't imagine how digestive.
Well, it's advertised as non-toxic.
It kind of sounds like some Comfort and Hagen stuff.
It won't kill you, but it'll kind of bind you up.
I think that is an excellent point to move on.
That's probably how we'll start this episode.
Probably. So yeah, one of the questions that we thought was a very good one was about confidence, and just how when you start out, obviously you don't know as much about what you're trying to get into as the people around you. So there's you're on the back foot, and that's a standard thing. And you were saying about the different kinds of confidence.
I think yeah, there's certainly two, well at least two. I mean, but two different types of confidence we can talk about in regards to kind of students and getting into this world. And one of those is kind of like a general practice-based confidence, which grows with time.
So competence of actual being able to do
the more
something.
experience you have, the better, the more things you do that improve each time, the more comfortable you feel with that work. And I think as an artist, you should never feel fully confident. I think that there's always an element of, I can see everything that's wrong with it. Because the minute you're happy, you're completely delighted that the thing is beyond improvement, you've failed, you've stopped.
Well, it comes to the discussion of the nature of being an artist, that we're never satisfied with our work.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing, really, because it lets us know that we're on the right track. When the moment comes, if we look at our work and think it's perfect, there's nothing I can do to improve it, that's the red flag that you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
So getting comfortable with that discomfort is something we as artists need to accept. It's just the way it is.
Sorry, guys. I think I'm better than everybody else.
Is this the other type of
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is self-confidence.
Yeah. But it's that thing of like,
it's a delusion.
The better you get, it's like wherever your ability is, your expectation of yourself
is always going to be over.
So as you increase, so does your expectation. So you're always seeing this gap, without realizing that this growth is happening.
I'm hoping that gap will narrow. I've not noticed it. I still feel as upset with my practice as I ever was.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like you say, as your confidence moves, your expectations.
Yeah, it's getting outside your comfort level and working until you're comfortable again. You can take one step backward as long as you're making two steps forward. Yeah. As long as there's forward growth, you're in good shape.
And take enjoyment in the growth as well.
Yeah.
That's where the enjoyment's got to come from, because you've just got to accept there isn't going to be a destination like that. You're not going to.
There isn't an end point.
You're not going to make it. You're not going to get it to the point where I'm happy with everything that I do.
This is where we can bring in deadline talk, the joy of deadline.
Yeah, well, no matter how good you get, somebody can show you something you didn't know.
Yeah.
Let's talk about deadlines. That's a good point, because I think one of the things that can be quite upsetting, and I remember this when I was at college, was when I had something like a project that was quite open-ended. It was more distressing than if someone gave you a time limit and was specific. And obviously when I'm working on a job, I've got a deadline that the story's already been taken care of by people that write the stories. The acting's taken care of by the person who's going to wear this. Someone's going to light it, someone's going to film it. All I've got to do is make this nose like this on this date, so I can exclude everything else and not worry about it and focus all my attention on those three things I need to do.
And someone will sign it off. Someone will tell you it's okay to stop now. Yeah. Whereas when you've got an open-ended project as an academic, it's how much can you get in there. It can always be bigger, it can always grow, if you get what I mean. And I think
you need a brief, you need to give yourself a deadline and a brief.
And the other thing terrifying is that these guys are starting all these skills from scratch. They've not done anything in special makeup effects before or VFX before. So the rate at which they're learning at the beginning is incredibly fast, to the point where 2 or 3 weeks after you've done something, you could have learned new techniques that mean you would have probably done that differently now. And what we pretty much ask them to do is, okay, well, redo that aspect of your project, reflect on it, improve it, redo it. So sometimes it feels like your project's just, it's just going backwards again. It's just going backwards again, because we're asking you to rebuild things using this improved, refined technique in your understanding that you're developing. But that can be a huge cause of anxiety, for a student.
And I think understanding and accepting that you're not the only one who's feeling this and going through this process. Everybody is. Can help you with self-confidence, knowing that it's not just you. I mean, Rick Baker posted an Instagram, an epic failure recently of a mold he was making that he 3D printed the core, he 3D printed the jacket, and was filling the void for the matrix mold with silicone, and had forgotten to clamp the mold down, and the silicone was lifting it up off of the table because it was light resin. And he's going, oh shit, he's trying to scoop the silicone back up into it, and he owned it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you don't make mistakes, you don't learn anything, and you're going to make mistakes at every level, even at Rick Baker's level. Mistakes happen. You just own it and move on, and try not to make that mistake again. You make different mistakes, and hopefully they won't be as bad. But that's just the nature of being an artist. It's going to happen as long as you want to be doing this stuff.
I think that's something we push really hard. We're really mistakes aren't punished. Mistakes aren't bad. The only time a mistake comes bad is if it's compounded by not analysing that mistake, not understanding why that became a mistake,
or repeating a mistake that you made before.
But in the educational environment, that's when mistakes are encouraged to be made. Do them now when you don't have a job on the line. That's you don't have a family to support. That suddenly you've made a mistake. That now how am I going to put food on the table and pay the mortgage and all those things?
It gets us to the essence of education for me, and that is that the student has to try. That's all they have to do, because if they try and they get it right, we will come along as educators and go, well done, that's brilliant, be supportive, this is how you could extend it. And if you try and you get it wrong, as educators, we will be there talking you through the mistake. You understand it now, you can reflect on it, and now you can improve. So either way, if you try, a few moments later, you will have the right knowledge and the right experience. It doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong when you try. The only thing we can't help, and this is often an issue of confidence, is someone that doesn't try in the first place. They find an excuse to avoid, they find an excuse to do something else. And
you have to lose that fear of failure.
This is a big thing as well. I'm glad it circled back to confidence, because that's what I was thinking. If a student tries a bit and kind of skates, it's really difficult, because you can give them feedback and you can give them, but it's always so. Whereas if a student really tries, pushes really hard, and almost not invites failure, but skirts, flirts with failure. I think that's the cutting edge. That's where we want to be. We want to be at the edge of our ability all the time, because that's when we learn best, and that's when we make mistakes and go, oh, well, that's an interesting thing that just happened. I mean, it's completely screwed me over, but it's an interesting thing that I'm going to remember.
I don't like making mistakes when I'm doing demos, but when they happen and they do, I try to turn it into a teaching moment.
Absolutely.
So that I can help somebody else prevent making the same mistake. And sometimes it's a software glitch. When I've done After Effects demos where I've rehearsed what I'm going to do in the demo, and make sure it's perfect and I've got everything in the right sequence. And invariably, when I get the demo happening, I go in the right sequence and click. Click.
Yeah, that's embarrassing.
I think
Sort of own it. Yeah.
What's the worst thing? What's the biggest mistake any of you have made so far in the program, and what have you learned from it?
I personally agree on now making molds. I'm getting into making molds. I find it really satisfying. But I think early days, with every mold that I made, every single one went wrong. But I think that's probably why I like it so much now. Is because it is that process of when it goes wrong, you get to figure out what went wrong and how to fix it, and it's all just a learning process.
That's exactly the right attitude, because if you had done a mould and you got it all right and it was right first time, then there's probably a lot of other people in the world that could have done that and got it right first time as well. If you've been through failure and failure and failure and you've learned and learned and learned, what you end up at the end of it has value. That's rare. That is employable. That's something that's in demand. Yeah. Like you don't want things to come easily. Like while you're in this environment, you want to master the really difficult things.
And that's interesting, because you've got a path to. Because I make a lot of molds. I spend a lot of time making molds. So had I been there as a final to see what it was that you did that went wrong, I could have written it down and handed it to a post-it note. Obviously, very tiny fly handwriting. But you know, it's like you did something. You did something you should have done, or you didn't do something you should have done. It was an actual quantifiable action that needed to be corrected. And then when you know that, you don't do that mistake again.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's amazing.
The importance of each individual process within a whole process. Like a bleed, for example, you know that if you're filling up your matrix mold, you need a bleed hole there, otherwise you can have a big air bubble. It's not going to go well. Or like,
sounds like a recent mistake.
Yeah, air pockets are bad.
I mean, the first plaster mold that I made, it was like this thing, and it just cracked. And I was like, of course that would happen.
Yeah, and now you know.
It took for it to break in my hands. Like, well, of course that was going to happen.
But you learn the lessons so well that way. You know, the pain, the sadness, it burns into your soul. Like, and we have this expression here, which we want you to make every single mistake you can do here. So you make all the easy ones here, all the obvious ones here. When you go into industry, anything that you make a mistake on is going to be either understandable or not critical. Like, you know, this is such a safe environment to make mistakes.
When it comes to confidence as well, that this environment really does help to build your self-confidence, because you are encouraged to make those mistakes and learn from those mistakes. And it's all just so welcoming and inviting, because, as you said, like now is the time where you can do that. Yeah. And it's okay because you are encouraged to learn from it.
And it seems that you're working in small enough groups that there are few enough of you that you can develop some real camaraderie and have a support system for when these mistakes happen.
We catch each other's mistakes. I know when we were doing
That's
the
huge.
silicone running, one of our friends went to pour just pigmented A into a mold, and I was like, "Oh, how do you change that?"
You put bullet time.
Catalyst? What's catalyst?
It's nice to have that, to be able to be around and help each other.
Yeah. Well, that's not by accident as well. I mean, on all of the programs here, we cultivate that sense of community. You know, I've said to you guys, I'm a fucking hippie deep down at heart. I believe that we are better when we pull together. Yeah. We catch each other's mistakes. We pick each other up when we're feeling sad. You know, that studio for me is more than just a place to go to work. It's something that is a little bit more important than that.
It's hugely important, because a lot of artists like to work alone. You know, that's another part of the artist's nature. But this is not a solitary industry. You have to rely on one another. You have to work with one another. Just because of the nature of production pipelines, there are so many people involved. You have to get outside your little introverted shell. You know, I consider myself to be an outgoing introvert, because you know I don't like to go to big parties, but this is great. You know, I've conditioned myself to be able to talk to large groups of people, but it's still, when I go to trade shows and people come up to me wanting autographs and signing books, I love it, but at the same time, it makes me feel very uncomfortable.
It drains you.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't want to sound negative, because you've all asked me to sign copies of the book, which I love, but at the same time, it calls attention to me, and that is not something I'm accustomed to.
A lot of us feel that.
The solitary nature of the artist is also a really interesting question. It's how much of that solitary nature is because it comes back to confidence. How much of it is that the artist wants to work on something until they are happy to share it, and they're not confident sharing it earlier. Mm-hmm. And that's something we try and identify on the courses as well. And you know, beat out of students in a nice way. Because when you're in industry, you need to be sharing every stage of your work, because someone might pick up something that you're doing wrong. They might go, oh no, we're going in a slightly different direction. No, can we change that early? And there's nothing worse than going away for 5 days, doing something and doing the big reveal at the end of it, and your supervisors, well, that's not actually what I wanted. Like, you know, now they're really frustrated. They've just burned 5 days of fees, like, you know, paying for something that they can't use, and the client isn't going to sign off. So it's really important that you share, you know, that process, and, you know, you sort of, even if you're really embarrassed about what it is, because it's only 2 hours work and you haven't done anything, you get it out there, like, you know, and try and, you know, identify that fear, that part of your ego that's making you reluctant to do that, and try and deal with that and get rid of it, because it makes you so much more powerful to work with. Like, I had an expression from a guy, in a director of a company called Screenplay, who said, I would much rather hire a mediocre artist that has mastered their ego than an amazing artist that hasn't, because he has got.
Yeah, we had that conversation again at lunch today.
Yeah, because he's got an amazing eye. He's sort of like, look, if this artist's work is mediocre, I will give them round and round of feedback, and eventually it will get there, and then that artist will improve over time.
And they won't get in their own way.
Exactly. Like, yeah. But he will never be surprised by something which is just pulled out, and the artist has taken it in a different direction. It's nothing that he can use, and he can't. You know, so it's a really interesting comparison that with the solitary artist, our industry.
And what you're also talking about, I think it's important if you're working on a project to share your progress at every stage along the way, so that you don't get to this close to finished point and have to go but realize that I didn't share these different stages, and now 2 days of work is out the window because you've got to go back
3 or 4 steps. So
just make sure that you're letting everyone know what's happening at every stage, so that you don't wind up shooting yourself in the foot.
This is where our community really comes in, and this happens on all of the programs. You know, if you're constantly working, you know, well, we have huge open access areas, so kind of even outside of classes, our students are expected to come in and practice, you know, keep working on the craft. So by being in that open space together, they can help catch things, they can help guide each other, they can, you know, I have lovely memories of third years coming, you know, as I'm about to help a student, and I'll see a third year walk across and go, hey, have you tried doing this? I was in here bashing my head against the keyboard trying to solve some ZBrush problems, and 2 of Rich's students, a second year and a third year, came over and was like, hey Rick, what's going on? I was like, this is bullshit. And they went, if you try Control N, I was like, what's Control N? And you know, this is, you know, and it's that, I think one of the things that's great about education generally is, you know, we're all on this journey. Cheesy journey, thank you guys. Can we edit that out? You know, we're all walking this road. It's just that, you know, Rick Baker's miles down this road. You know, we're a little bit further ahead than you guys. So that when we run into problems, it's great to be able to have that community kind of hive mind to solve problems.
Yeah, communication is critical.
And if you want to be really direct, like, the grade averages of every year group across the last 10 years, there will always be exceptional students, there will always be weak students. And the ones in the middle drift depending on how good the community in that year group is. If the community is really good, if everyone gets to know each other, puts their egos aside, and you get a really good friendship, peer-to-peer learning, that middle group will drift up towards the high marks. There's always students that aren't going to work, and no matter how good you are as a teacher, you cannot extrinsically motivate them enough to carry on working. At some point, it has to come from the student to be intrinsically motivated. But in groups with good community, that the middle sort of performing student goes up and up and up and up towards the end of third year. So, and also completely sort of in a sort of self-centered way, if you have a good community and good friendships, they will be your links in industry. When you go out into industry, they are going to recommend you, they're going to advise you, they're going to, you know, if you can't solve a problem, you pick up a phone one of your friends. Have you tried this? Good idea. Put the phone down, try it. When somebody hires you, they're not just hiring you, they're hiring that network that you have, like, and that community that comes with you. Like, and, you know, part of Bolton, we have Discord channels with graduates mixing with normal students and normal students and not normal students, all types of students,
muggles,
and even applicants that are thinking of joining the course, because that sense of community, that sense of, we do it through the brand of Bolton University, but everyone is part of this family, and everyone helps everyone.
Exists on networking.
Yeah.
You can't do it by yourselves. I mean, you can try, but it's not going to work. I mean, the very fact that you all are here doing this with us right now tells me that you are driven enough to get where you need to go.
That community thing extends as well. I mean, it doesn't stop. This is, once you're ours, you're ours.
Well, this was amazing at the prosthetics event. There were like 10 people who had
I think at one point we were like 15 to plus.
Yeah.
And multiple years, multiple courses, all hanging out. Multiple years, multiple courses of graduates, all kind of hanging out and getting on, and all talking about the jobs that they're doing. We're doing this next. I'll give you a ring. And that community extends beyond, and
this behind us is the Wall of Fame. This is because it's the VFX side, but these are across the years the VFX graduates that graduated and got top jobs in industry, so leading studios, Oscar-winning studios. Okay. And if you start at that end, that's near 10 years. So a lot of those guys are now senior or supervisor level, and these guys are junior, just left and graduated. And so everyone that works really hard and becomes part of that community goes up on the wall, if there's a success story behind them. And
it's perfect, because I tell students all the time, if you like to watch movies, and you should, and television programs, watch the credits. Don't, when the lights come up in the theater, don't just get up and leave. Watch the credits, because the people whose jobs you want to have, their names are going to be scrolling by there. And they're all on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. Yeah. And they're reachable.
You want to be getting kicked out by the cleaners at the end, the ones that are trying
to Marvel movies are making you do that anyway, so...
Oh yeah, of course. Sit something at the end to make you...
But these are the people you want to reach out to and ask advice. The best way to not get work in the industry is to say, "Oh my God, Mr. So-and-so or Ms. So-and-so, I love your work. Are you looking for anybody?" But if you, that's no. But if you say, "Oh my God, your work is so inspiring to me. Would you be able to take a look at my work and tell me how I can improve this?" And
it's the right attitude.
Sure. Yeah. They'll give you some suggestions. You make those changes based on their suggestions and show them that work again. They may not be looking for anybody at the moment, but when they are, you're going to be at the top of that list.
You've just demonstrated perfect employment skills, like reacting to feedback, managing your ego, communicating well.
That's how to get a job.
Can we talk a little bit about the act of building confidence? Because if you feel like you don't have confidence, then obviously you need to work on it. I guess practice exposing yourself to things that would make you in a safe way, like taking on little jobs or being involved in things. What do we think about that? Because I think that's really important. If you'll be in a group of people, you'll know people who are really confident, and you may feel like you're not. And it might be, one of the portfolio surgeries we did was someone who was quite talented, quite skilled, would be considered a mature student now. Still felt kind of overwhelmed looking at all the people on Instagram and all the influencers and how many. It seemed like there was a direct correlation between people who have massive amounts of followers, who are not particularly talented, but they're just doing something that's attracting people's attention. And so they feel like, what's the point in me doing this amazing thing I can do if I've only got sort of 500 followers? It's like, yeah, but the thing you're doing is really good. You just need to learn some marketing skills to present it in a better way.
Which is often very different to the
it is, and I think it's, there's a lot of people who are really quite talented and they don't know that what they do is useful. They're not, but because they see people who are online, I don't know, doing whatever, something outrageous to get views, they think, well, I'm not going to do that, so I won't engage in that world at all. And so consequently they're kind of hidden under the radar.
Could be detrimental to
I find that with a lot of the first years though, because the first years come to us with this Instagram following and they see the final product and they're like, oh well, my work's not good enough because I'm not gaining all these followers, getting this instant gratification and these likes. So they do feel a bit, they're more harsh on themselves because they don't see themselves at that level. But again, it's like you've got to go through the process of understanding that that's not everything.
Yeah.
It's sort of learning the processes, making the mistakes, learning from each other. At uni is going to be different than people online.
It's a skewed value system, isn't it? To think that views or likes or followers.
It's the instant gratification that say, I don't know if you guys would agree with this and students would agree with this, but this sort of generation gets more from that instant gratification than they would from really trying and testing and going through the mistakes and understanding them than the lessons.
What do you tell them?
Yeah, so we'll go around and give them advice and things, and they'll be like, yeah. They'll take it on board. They might really take it on board and try again, or they'll just sort of, oh yeah. But if they put it on Instagram, then they'll be like, oh well, I've just posted this makeup that I've done, and I've got 18 likes in like a few seconds. Oh, this is great, and it's like, yeah, but like develop it, go through the process, understand how you can improve it for next time. Ask your classmates, ask the lecturers. There's a few first years in my class today doing sculpture burns, and I said, go ask Todd and Stu what they think of it. No, I can't do that. Yeah. But they'll put it on Instagram and they'll get these likes.
It's qualifying your validation is, and I think the problem with your generation, guys, you get your validation is almost paper thin. You're getting these instant kind of likes and shares, and this social media it's not a qualified validation. Whereas you put it in front of someone like Todd or Stu, it's worth more. The weighting on that validation is much different. So 1,000 likes could be nothing compared to one person's opinion, and I think it's very difficult to understand that when you've grown up in that world. Where I think we grew up in a world where we were protected from that.
It just wasn't an option.
I made shit in my bedroom. I made things that nobody really knew about. They didn't get it because I had to search for information in the back of books. And,
but also if you did something embarrassing, it wasn't captured on film for your eternal humiliation.
I am so glad the internet didn't exist when I was in college.
I don't think I'd have made it. Honestly, I don't think I've got so much respect for you guys. I reckon I'd have it's a pretty sticky end. Like I'd have really struggled. But also you've got to bear in mind places like ArtStation, places like Instagram. You are seeing the final product every single time, and that is almost toxic. Because you're never understanding the battle, the process, the journey that went into it. You're just seeing. I'm actually doing a talk on and filtered and adjusted. I'm doing a talk on the 7th of December, which is Intimidation to Inspiration, which is effectively showing that a very, very good piece of student work, if displayed in the wrong way to other students, will intimidate them. Because they'll just go, I will never be able to achieve that. But if you deconstruct that work and go, what is this made up of? What was the journey? How is this element done? How's that element solved? You can create a whole story that becomes an inspiring one, if that makes sense. And I do think it is actually very dangerous just looking at final products. And that's what Instagram is doing. It's just presenting to you the final thing and deliberately hiding all of the wrinkles, the cobwebs, quite literally sometimes.
If I judge my work on the basis of some of the things that I see on the internet, on Instagram, I would go get a work at a
give up straight.
At a hamburger joint. I just
give
up straight away. You can't judge yourself by what anybody else is doing. Nothing. Anybody except what you're doing.
And within seconds, you will find someone who will destroy you in each field. Any field that you want to get good at. You want to get good at painting, you want to get good at texturing, you want to get good at modelling. Just one search, bang, never be as good as that.
There are bad reviews of the best books ever written on Amazon. You know what I mean?
We talked a little bit about this last night with the Dunbar's number thing. Our societies are not meant to be as big as they are. As human, as a species, we're supposed to live in groups of around 150 to 200 people. Within that number, you could potentially be the fastest runner or the best singer or the best artist. Whereas now our society is billions of people, and Rick Baker's one of them. So fuck, I'm not going to be the best artist. It's really difficult to kind of come to terms with that, and it's we talked about the dilemma of being an artist, and we talk about it a lot in classes. Keeping mentally kind of on top of things, accepting that sometimes, I think it's great that we work in an industrial environment, so it's industrial art. this work's not mine. I can disconnect a little bit. I don't have to invest emotionally, but you still do. So managing how you emotionally interact with things, and I think the social media side of things is another aspect of that. You know, if we choose, or if we are not able to kind of compartmentalize the validation we get from that. Now, I love Instagram. I love it when I get lots of likes. I don't understand how it works. I'm old, but I enjoy that paper thin validation. But I know
it's not the only validation you get.
But I know that's not what nourishes me.
Yeah.
What nourishes me is my fight. You know, my daily battle with being better. You know, every time I meaningfully interact with clay, be it digital or practical, I'm pushing hard, and I'm picking up the things that I do wrong, and I'm kicking my own ass. But I'm also really fucking proud of the results that come out of it, even though I know next time it's going to be better. It's trying to find that balance and understanding that the validation you get from here it can be helpful and it is nice, but it's not everything. And I think that's a really difficult thing for.
Yeah, just be careful how you interact with social media and with that sort of, it can be very difficult.
I think age comes into it as well, because I can trust that when I get older, as I get older, I'll gain skills, I'll get better at it. But when I'm looking on Instagram and there's a 13-year-old that has way better skills than me, it's just they're already way ahead of me.
But again, I think there's something false about that, in that you don't know what happened in that person's life to help get them to that
advantage
point.
in that area.
You're not getting the whole story.
But I know what you mean, that they're an outlier, but you have been made aware of them in a way that you wouldn't have been had they not able to broadcast their amazing ability. And there's only so much they can do with that ability. It's not like it's not a zero-sum game where if they get to do something, that means no one else can do that thing. But it is intimidating, because you're not replacing that with other kinds of validation necessarily yet. You know, you've still got to go through your thing. So
if
I think
that person is that good at something at 13,
Yeah.
there may well be other areas they're not
peaked.
balanced in, like that you never see.
That may be as good as that person's ever going to get.
I think it's also when you're scrolling, you keep on scrolling, you're seeing loads of different artists, and you're just what's my point then? There's already loads of people.
Yeah.
Why?
Don't hurt yourself.
Stop scrolling.
I'm not doing it.
But when you
No,
see something very
it's great to
similar
talk
what
about
you've
it,
done,
because-
it's kind of
Everyone's journey's at different paces, though, isn't it?
You said journey.
That's. Sorry, I did it. But everyone's timeline is different, so people get to different points at different times. It's with me, personal life, my friends are buying houses and having babies, and I'm just not there. So it's even with creativity, you'll start at different points. Someone will be miles ahead in the sculpting, but you might be miles ahead with your mum.
That's so true. That's so true. Yeah, there are people that do that stuff, and they just life gets to that. They won't be producing like that all their life. At some point, their parents are going to get sick, or they want to have kids, or they'll do something different, and their priorities will shift.
We've had students that have pushed really, really hard at art, and they've just not quite got it by third year. But every single time they talk about it and explain it, I'm you're articulating it, you're understanding the process, you're when you see it in other people, you're doing really well, and their people skills are so strong, and it's well, why don't you just take all this knowledge and take a production route, go into some sort of element where you're working with artists, you're working with people, and those guys are getting hired so quickly off this course because they've got all the training in VFX, they understand what VFX is, but they are really good with people. So if you take someone from production, say from film or something like that, they come into the VFX world and they don't have any idea what a deadline, how long does it take you to model that? I have no idea. But even if you aren't great at modeling it because you've been through the course and you understand it, you have a good idea of roughly how much support that person would need, what they could deliver by. And then you have other skills like people skills, social skills, whatever it is. So there's opportunities everywhere. And I think
a showrunner and a line producer, there's so many things.
Yeah, exactly. There's for all sorts. And if you just stay passionate and you stay engaged and you stay talking to people, you stay communicating, like we've talked about, and you build that confidence slowly, there will be an opportunity for you. You honestly can bludgeon down the door of this industry. If you don't sort of get disheartened and give up, but
you have to stay alert. You've got to be able to recognize those opportunities and not be so tunnel vision, head down, doing your work, that you don't see these things coming along. You know, listen and watch and pay attention to everything.
I think there's also that difficulty that knowing there are so many people in this industry now that, like, are now a year and that will be going into the industry, and just that looming anxiety of, am I good enough to be noticed? Is my portfolio?
We all feel that.
You'll feel that way, but I think the other thing is you don't see how many of them are getting used up, like the amount that is required.
I
as well,
do understand that there are so many jobs. Like, it might not be exactly what you think that you want to go into, but it'll be kind of in that line.
I'm still trying to decide what I want to do when I grow up.
I think with this, there's a little element of you can only control what you can control. So you. I mean, it's great to look out into the wider world and go, you know, wow, constantly producing these wonderful, fun. You know, there's a lot of joy there.
There's a lot of joy.
But you can't compare yourself. You would never compare yourself to Rebecca because you're not insane.
I just can't wait to get to the point where I'm like, I am retired and I can do whatever I want.
Don't wish your youth away.
No.
Be your age.
You'll just be no. Your back will hurt. And, you're all that.
You can only do you. So make you the best you can be.
That's the thing. You've got to compare yourself to how you were last year, not how somebody is today.
And the industry is fully set up to accept people of all levels of experience. Yeah, you're not going to go on and have to do the hero sculpt for the film because Rick Baker's retired. Like, you know, that'll never. You'll be, you know, supported, and there'll be much simpler roles.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah,
you'll be nurtured.
They don't just leave you a lump of clay and say, right, see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where a lot of anxiety comes from. Like, you will be given simple, sometimes mundane tasks to
test you out,
prove yourself,
which you will ace because you've been here.
Exactly. Build your confidence, and as you do, you'll get to know people. You'll make those connections, and then the next opportunity will grow very naturally. Like, all you've got to get from university is that equipment, that background, that sort of mentality that equips you for the start of the industry, and then your journey will continue in industry.
You know what makes me think though? We're sitting here right now. Somewhere amongst our generation will be the Rick Bakers that will grow up to be.
Could be in this room.
And it's really strange to sit here and think,
it's not me.
What's going to happen in 20, 30 years when some of us might be in your position?
Yeah.
And to think, it's kind of crazy.
And just make sure you come back to a university like these guys are doing and inspire the next generation.
And things are getting phenomenally good. I mean, you look at, like, you know, what was considered an outstanding makeup 30 years ago. I mean, like Little Big Bang stuff is an amazing makeup, but there are age makeups now that are better, dare I say it. Do you know what I mean? And
100-year-old man.
Technically, but they're only better because Dick Smith did that then. And that was top of the range then. And it's just like,
you know, on the shoulders of giants.
You know, the 100 meters is getting beaten all the time because people are using that training and finessing and shaving off hundredths of a second, but a lot. It keeps happening 100th of a second until it gets beaten down. So you're going to reach, you know, there isn't really a peak with this. It just gets better and better and better. I mean, you rarely see. I mean, even in like things like Doctor Who, like a relatively low budget show, there's some pretty decent visual effects in it compared to what you would have had in movies 10 years ago. You know. And so it's never gonna, and those movies that have all that visual effects, there's a lot of practical stuff, because I think one thing that I've noticed is, slightly off topic because of the confidence thing, but a lot of stuff now is considered within the realm of digital. So it's not like you guys in digital are looking for more things to do because you're already going to be featured in every frame anyway. Do you know what I mean? So if something can be done practically and we can get it in camera, and could we please? So we don't have to fucking clean it up.
I think that's these days that competitive edge is gone. The best companies are collaborating. They are working together. Like, you know, and whether West Digital were to workshop, you know, that sort of model where the best solution comes from both sides working to their strengths. You don't want to be working on something digitally where you're like, if this had been done practically, it would have been so much better. Like, and that's kind of what Star Wars went through, like in a journey with some of the stuff where it's sort of like, okay, we're learning about how far you can push these things now, and it's always a balance. Like, you know, whatever skill set, whatever director you have, you've got a James Cameron, he's got a VFX background, he might lean more that way to solve some of his
his problems just because of his own background. But the solution is always going to lie with, you know, the strengths of both areas collaborating. And it is never uplifting doing something that you know should have been done another way and it would have been done better, like if you get what I mean. But I love it when you have the digi doubles of practical effects. So you've got a practical effect, and it's a practical effect for loads of it, and every now and again it does something that you just can't do, and there the digi double comes in there. And you've got the workflow where it's either a digital sculpt that's then 3D printed and then made into a practical piece, or it's a practical piece that's then scanned, and that's the starting point for the digital piece. And you've got that wonderful synergy going on.
And you can have a very real hand in that digi-double from the practical. It's not this clear division where they're separated. It's like we sculpted something in ZBrush, we give it to you guys, and then
goes backwards and forwards. It's feedback from both sides. Like, you know, digital person comes up with something, practical person goes, well, the guy's got to get in there in a suit. Like, that's all got to work.
Great
Like,
example of practical and digital working harmoniously together.
I mean, there's so many cool examples. That is definitely one of them, and you know, I think that's where the most exciting work comes, and you know, it's most rewarding in industry, and it's most important to have that awareness of what the other fields of film effects can do. So, you know, otherwise, if you only learn VFX, you're going to try and solve everything with VFX, and that's not intelligent. Like,
these are just tools, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You pick the right tool for the right job. I think one of the things I love, we mentioned this earlier, the practical effects, digital effects things. The practical effects are kind of like the meat of my meal. They're the things that sustain me. They fulfill me, and you know, I get a real nice reaction, visceral reaction to them. The digital effects are the spice. You know, if I just ate spice, I'd be real sick. And we went through that in the 90s a little bit. You know, we were throwing VFX at everything, and it didn't work.
Disaster.
If I just had practical effects,
you're very bland.
Life would be bland. So I think, you know, this kind of balance between the two. You know, you can throw a bit of extra spice in for some fire. You can kind of have a nice meaty stew, and it's, you know, comforting and warm. And I think that's where the balance is when we kind of use both of these things super effectively to complement each other.
Something that I noticed as well is, and I get the same, like I started on a film earlier this year, and I, for the first week, felt like a complete fraud, surrounded by these amazing sculptors. And what's weird is, you know, when everyone sort of goes home and, you know, you kind of look and you can look at everyone's sculpts, because you know how to sculpt and you know how to do things, and these are the things you can do practically here now to get better. Then when you see amazing sculpture, you can go up to it and look at it, and you can see that it's a sculpt. You actually, now I remember this when I was on my first ever job when I left college, and I got to watch, you know, people work. You can actually see, oh, that's sculpted skin texture. I can see that it's a sculpt. I can see the little indentations, but they're indentations that look like skin pores, or I can see that they're supposed to be skin pores, and there's enough of them that they yield that illusion. But it's like, but you can see that it's sculpted, so you kind of make that connection. And go, oh, this amazing person just makes dents in clay. I can make dents in clay, so I can do it better. So you stop separate, and when you see the finished things, what you were saying, you kind of get this amazing finished polish routine. But actually, if you were sitting through the rehearsals, and you did the rehearsals too, you could do that too.
There's nothing.
So you see those steps, and that's why I think it's really important to that's why I love the process of these things, is because, like you were saying about your mold was broken, there's a series of steps that you take, and if you do these things, you get a result that works. It's just doing those things, and maybe you don't know what they are, but they are knowable. And once you know that and you really believe it, you're less intimidated, you are instead inspired, which is what you're saying, where you go, this is really cool. And so instead of thinking that's something that can't be done, we go, well, clearly it can. And were I able to watch the replay of that? I mean, I do watch some, I can't remember, it's HE77 or something, there's a sculptor, and she's done these amazing ZBrush anime kind of sculpts, and they're kind of sped up turntable sculpts. And I'm like, I don't know what happened, but I bet if we were in the room together and she showed me what she was doing, I could go, I know that tool, I know that. Oh, it's just that shape there, but done expertly because you've done that 1,000 times.
Sped up and edited.
And edited.
So all the way they went a bit wrong, and oh god, I'm just going to reload from 3 versions before. Like, you don't see any of that.
But it's like, wow, it is intimidating, like you were saying, but at the same time, it is knowable.
Yeah.
And so your job is to pick it apart, because everything. And one of the things I've often said that I think works is that everything that's complicated tends to be layers of simplicity laid on top of each other, and your job really is to be at first impressed with the finished thing, but then forensically go back and start unpicking it and figure out what the first thing was that was done layer by layer. And it's often far simpler than you think. It's just beautifully arranged. because the world's best novels still use the same 26 letters that I use, to apologise for doing something stupid. So, you know what I mean? It's the same thing.
It's true, and if you get a longer novel, it's not harder to read. Do you know what I mean? It's just more layers of complexity, and that's where, as soon as you don't understand something and that thing starts to layer up and layer up and layer up, it does become unachievable. But
so you don't start with a novel, start with a short story.
Yeah, exactly. Like I always say to my students, like, if you understand what a brick is, you build a wall. You're not going to be intimidated by the wall. It's just lots of bricks put on top of each other. And if you have a house, well, that's just an extension of that. It's very natural. But if you didn't understand what a brick was, as these buildings got bigger and bigger and bigger, it will become overwhelming and difficult to engage with. So the thing is to deconstruct it, find the building blocks, understand them, and then when you rearrange them and build them back up again, it won't be so daunting.
Yeah, which is why when you see something on Instagram that's kind of crappy but covered in blood and everyone's going, oh, it's amazing. And then you see like a completely realistic, flawless nose sculpted by like some top artist, you're like, oh my God, that's incredible, and no one likes it. Because they don't know what they're looking at.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a good example of like, but the 5 people that like that are probably the ones that paid 10 grand to have it made. Yeah. So it's like
it's the reason I have a sharp intake of breath at inappropriate moments in a movie, like because you see something on a film and it's so staggeringly well done. I'm like, but everyone else who doesn't understand the VFX didn't realise that something happened.
Doesn't even see that it's
So I'm like, there's this silence now. I was like, is he okay? Like, sort of like, it's just because it was so beautiful. Like, but as I say, with compositing and VFX, it's like if you showed your grandma, then it would be something along the lines of like, oh, what did you do on this? I did that. What exactly? Like, the whole point is you never see it.
Exactly. You get it. You show somebody your work and they can't.
They didn't realise. They didn't realise you did something. Like, but ultimately quite unrewarding. Like, and 90% of the audience didn't realise something happened. So
I mean, it's probably better than doing a really, really elaborate practical effect and someone going, "Ooh, nice VFX."
Ooh. That happens. Because you do hear people like just horrible word, but just layman. Do you know what I mean? People might see something and go, oh, I thought they did it on a computer. I hear that all the time. They just assume if it happens on screen, it must be computer.
It must now be.
Someone gets a throat cut, it must be a digital effect. I didn't realise they did that practically. And it's like, and sometimes it makes it both, but it's like, but it is because a lot of it's just NDA stuff. I can't show what I do on things. So I do these video tutorials and stuff when I can because I really like explaining the process. I care about it.
We're all miserable. So, so people don't realise we did anything, and then the practical guys are all being told that, I thought that was VFX.
Yeah, so no one's really happy.
That's why, exactly.
Great advice.
But you enjoy your work. It's that amazing thing.
It's not
honestly,
about getting seen, is it? It's about doing
it's about the craft. It's about the practice.
It's about doing something creative
and being seen by the right people. That's the thing that matters.
My mum and
dad
said the only thing they want to see is just my name on the screen. They say don't care if it's a really shit film, as long as my name's on that screen.
Oh God, my dad said I want
to
even then, you don't get credited. Like I after the prosthetic event,
just
I was
the fact that you
searching
worked on it doesn't mean you're going to get screen credit.
No, you're not entitled to a screen credit.
If you come across the VFX, you're much more likely to get credit. I'm afraid. We get more for the companies. We get more screen space. So we get put right at the very end. Like right at the end,
like after the second teaser trailer for the next.
That is a cultural thing. That the first shift for that was Gravity. If ever you watched Gravity, Sandra Bullock and George Clooney floating around in space, and I watched the credits at the end, and I almost missed the VFX credits because they were put so early because it was just so much to do with VFX that actually they got the credits moved earlier above. But normally it's all the film camera crew, sound crew, the pets, the everything else, the cleaners, and then VFX comes in.
Probably 6 people for every name you do see on screen.
Absolutely. You're still drawing lots even in VFX, so they actually will. You pick something out to see whether your name goes up on that, and then they sometimes try and remember that for the next one. So if you miss that credit, you get the next one.
But Pixar will put the name of every child born during production.
That kid didn't even work on it. You got a credit.
Musicians who played on the score.
I played on the score. Oh wow!
It answered a lot of my questions, but when I did it, I got really nervous because, like, I know I've watched a lot of your videos and everything like that, and I've followed
all three of yours work, and my vision kind of blurred halfway through when he was talking. I was like, ooh, and then he was like, speak up more, and I was like, I can't.
I'm doing the best I can, man.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, things like that, that's the start of confidence. You know,
That's
actually being brave enough to say, you know, to ask that question, to put your hand up, and then, yeah, all right, maybe you nearly died halfway through, but you made it.
It'll be much easier next time.
So
the
next
more
time,
you do it, the easier it's going to get.
You know, that's how we build confidence. It's, you know, it's how do you eat an elephant? A little bit at a time. You know, just take it step by step, and you know, you guys will grow, or you'll invent bits of your persona that are pretty good at this. I'm not a naturally confident person, but you know, I can stand in front of you guys and have a good chat because I've invented a version of Rick that enjoys it. And part of me, we've started to merge together a little bit now, so I do kind of enjoy hanging out with you.
But you do definitely, as you get older, I think you do grow, you build up a confidence that's not based on what other people think.
Yeah,
I'm definitely more confident.
I think if
I get that from my work.
If it moves in a positive way, then
it's something that comes with time, like wisdom. No, in my case, not so much.
It's very important to understand that knowledge and that experience exists because it's the other side of confidence. I don't necessarily think is relevant to this, but sometimes when students, they learn all the techniques, they go in a third year, I know all the techniques, and then they go into industry and it's sort of like, right, I think we should do this by the, you know, like this, and it's great because they're informed by all your techniques and all the things you've learned, but they're not informed by years and years and years of doing projects and projects and projects. And some people, a senior person, they may well go, I think we should do it this way. And it's very important that you listen when they say that, because they might not even understand why they are making that decision. But what they have behind them is eons of experience. Like, you know, there's a chap called Eamon Butler who works at Cinesight, who was an old Disney animator. And he's been in the industry sort of 30 years, sort of thing, at least. So as a 21-year-old, you're going into an interview and everything you ever did in your life, you learned to walk, you learned to talk, you went to school, you played some football, you learned chemistry, you sat your GCSEs, you did your A-levels, you got all of that fits in just to a small part of his experience in the industry. Like, that is inconceivable. And if anything comes across as arrogant, or if you come across in any way, if you think you know it at that stage, that's a big warning flag to them that, okay, arrogance is just this person's, you know, openness to learning has closed. Yeah, you know, it's not in any way, you know, the difference between confidence and arrogance is very important. Like, and you know, you've just got to go in there and just try and absorb as much as you can from these people, because they have like an intangible experience that you cannot get it any other way. You just have to live it.
You will never know everything.
Yeah, you can't learn it all. You just have to exist with it, and we can't teach you that. Like, you know, this is when you come here. That's the sort of the effort, the trying. That's what builds that side of you. Like, you know, if I figured out a way to teach that, I wouldn't be here. I'd have gone and solved it somewhere. Exactly. Yeah.
You may have learned everything you know from these guys, but you don't know everything they know.
You need to learn how to learn.
One thing I would recommend, I mentioned it yesterday, but you may not have been there, was a podcast I listened to called the Blind Boy Podcast. Anyone listen to that?
Yeah.
So good. He talks a lot about mental health, and one of the things he goes on about is an internal locus of evaluation, where you don't let the outside. In some ways, like, he's written some books, and he was saying, you know, when he gets good reviews, he feels really good about it, but he's very careful, because equally you're giving that power to external influences. Yeah. So if you say I'm good, I feel good, but that also means if I see a shitty review, I feel bad. Whereas you should kind of know what's good and bad, and it's more a case of I don't like what you've done rather than it is shit. But people don't say that; they just say what they don't like, and so you end up feeling bad because they didn't like it. Well, it's not for you. Another one, Scroobius Pip. I'm going to listen to. He's a rapper. He has a stammer, and he overcame it. He still has it, but he does a lot of spoken word stuff as a career, and he has a range of like merch, and on it the logo or the tagline on it says, "This may not be for you, and that's okay." It's just like, do you know what I mean? It's like, but most people go, "I don't like it, therefore it's shit," and it's like, okay, fair enough. And it might be shit. You might do something shit, but that doesn't mean it's true.
In a creative team, that subtle use of language is just so important. Like, if you say, no, you're wrong, you are attacking the person and saying they are wrong. If you're saying, oh, I see what you've done here, but could we maybe explore this? you're now not attacking them. You're attacking. You're discussing. You know, you're accepting responsibility. Like, I feel that maybe we could do this. You're putting the emphasis on it's you that would like to maybe explore this variation. It's not them that are wrong as a person. And that
constructive.
Yeah, you're saying the same thing, but just having a non-confrontational language is in a creative environment with a team is so important. And that there are some people that are very good at it, and there's some people that aren't. But if it's something that you can consciously try and develop, it will really, really help you.
There's quite a good book about it as well. What's it called? Do you remember?
Non-violent communication.
Yes.
Non-violent
So
communication.
to clarify here, from an academic point of view, if I say to a student, it's a bit shit, isn't it? That's not good.
How
I've just got to go off and redo some assessment.
Firstly, well done for putting up with my fucking tirade before getting to that Bolton thing. If you listen to both of those fully,
we kind of wandered all over the place there.
We did, but I appreciate you guys listening, sticking with it.
Yeah, give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. So you can leave us a voice message on the website battleswithbitsofrubber.com, or send us an email at stuartandtodd@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We always love to hear from you.
And you can leave us a voice message directly on the website.
Yeah. And we hope you keep listening. And tell your friends.
Yes, please. That's one of the biggest things that we can do. I mean, we don't have a Patreon or anything like that. We don't have advertisers. So we pay for all of this ourselves, and we give up the time to do it, which I enjoy doing. But if you were wondering how you could support us, I think if you could just tell one person, like if 100 people listen to this and you tell someone that you think might be interested, that's 100 new people that might find us. You know, that helps us along. So yeah, if you want to do us a solid and you like what we're doing and you don't think we're complete pricks, well, certainly maybe you can think I'm a prick because I do go on. I can understand that. But if you want to support us and show some love, then tell somebody new about us, so we are shown to more people. That would help. Us.
Oh, and hey, before we go completely, there's a Marmite update.
All right. Yeah. Should we tell the story? Did we tell the story about this?
I think we did. Yeah. With me thinking it was butter. Anyway,
looking at the package, it was,
I am a Marmite devotee. I have now, because I was shopping here in Atlanta for some last minute Christmas stocking stuffers, and at the Publix market near the complex where my folks live, there's an entire, on the international foods aisle, there's an entire UK section. And there was Marmite. He's like, oh.
I'm so annoyed that you found this out too late that I could have bought you, or you could have bought some while we were here, because it's so cheap here.
It's so good.
I mean, a little goes a long way though, right? You don't need much,
a little goes a long way. But we had my brother-in-law is a chef, as is my sister, and we had lamb chops for dinner Christmas night. And I love lamb chops with mint jelly, but we had vegetables and mashed potatoes and lamb chops. And I said, I bet you Marmite might taste good with the potatoes. Well, I can tell you a little bit of Marmite with the lamb. Unfucking real.
That's so cool.
Oh my God.
There are going to be people listening to this though who know Marmite and decide they don't like it, and they'll hate that. So for these people, I apologize. But
that's okay. To each his own, or to each their own.
Do you know where Marmite is from originally? Do you know what it was?
Oh, wasn't it kind of like sludge from the bottom of a Bach beer barrel?
Yeah, it's a dick. It's a dick. It's a let me try that again. Marmite. I'm keeping that in, so to speak. Marmite is a dark, thick yeast extract spread, right? It's made from concentrated yeast extract, which is a byproduct from brewing beer.
Not from your dick.
No, not from your dick. I mean, if there's a yeasty extract in your dick, that's probably something he's looking at. You don't
want to smear that on anything edible.
No, it was conceived in 1902 by the Marmite, when the Marmite Food Company opened a small factory in Burton-on-Trent, where it still resides today. So yeah, it's a byproduct of brewing. But yeah,
I love it.
It's delicious. I like it on toast.
And the Twiglets are one of my favorite snacks. I hope I can find Twiglets over here.
We'll have to ship you a care package over, maybe.
Yes, please.
Oh man, that was disgusting. I apologize.
Yeah.
If you don't like Marmite, and my disgusting mouth now doesn't help, it's just a horrible cluster of awfulness. So I apologize.
Keep listening just for my sake.
There you go.
Hey, we hope you have a happy new year. Hope that 2022 will be a better year for us all. I would prefer not to have a repeat of this year.
Yeah, man. Here's to good things. Let's work to make things better. Let's do what we can to make things better.
Yeah. And I hope we get to see all of you in person sometime in the coming year.
Yeah, man. That'd be awesome. Maybe go to Monster Palooza or something.
Yeah.
That'd be cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Get your butt over here.
Okay. I'll do what I can. All right, buddy.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
No worries, man. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye. That's cool. I'm going to end meeting for all now, okay?
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Cheers, buddy. I'll speak to you soon.
Right. Okay. Bye.
Take care, man. Bye.
I'll call you when I get home.
Okay. Take care, man. Have a good day.
All right. You too. Bye.